The night was quiet, too quiet. The laughter from the Halloween party had faded, and the last of the decorations crinkled in the cold breeze. It was nearly 3 a.m. when Cindy Song stepped out into the darkness, her bunny costume glowing faintly under the streetlights. She expected a short walk home, just a few blocks, just a few minutes, but she never made it. In the moments after she left, no one saw her again. There were no screams, no calls for help, no sounds that broke the stillness of that late autumn night, just silence. That eerie quiet would shake a whole community and leave investigators chasing shadows for years. Her friends hadn't realized anything was wrong at first. They left the party assuming she would follow on her own. But as the hours ticked by, her phone stayed unanswered. Her car stayed where she'd parked it. And by morning, when someone finally began to worry, the only trace of Cindy was the soft echo of her footsteps disappearing into the night. Police were called. Searches began. Neighbors spoke of strange lights, odd noises, and people seen wandering late at night, but nothing concrete linked to Cindy. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. And that's where this story begins, at the edge of fear, where questions far outnumber answers, and where a young woman stepped into the night and simply vanished. Cindy wasn't just any student. She was bright, kind, and full of life. She had plans, friends, and a future that seemed as wide as the sky. But on that cool November night, something unseen, something quiet stole her away. Imagine this. You're walking home after a party. You're tired, maybe laughing at a silly joke, thinking about a warm bed. You see your streetlights flicker. You hear a distant dog bark. But otherwise, nothing out of the ordinary. No danger in sight. Just you and the path ahead. That's exactly how Cindy's walk began. Yet somewhere along that familiar route, something changed. No one knows exactly where, no one knows exactly when, but at some point between leaving the party and disappearing, her life was altered forever. When Cindy didn't show up the next morning, her roommate tried her phone. Nothing. No missed calls, no texts, just silence. That silence felt heavier than any noise. Her car was found near her apartment complex, exactly where she had left it the night before. The doors were locked, her purse was inside, her keys were gone. It made no sense. Usually, when someone leaves a phone or purse behind, there's a reason. There's somewhere safe, or upset, or stuck. But Cindy's belongings suggested she hadn't planned to disappear. Police checked surveillance cameras in the area, but street cameras showed only shadows and empty streets. There were no clear images of another person walking with her, no cars stopping for her, no flash of headlights that seemed out of place, just empty asphalt and blinking lights. Days went by, flyers went up. College students and neighbors formed search parties. Everyone wanted answers. Rumors started. Some said they saw a woman on the edge of town late that night. Others swore they heard a scream in the distance, but nothing solid, nothing that led anywhere. Investigators thought at first maybe she had simply gotten lost or had an accident, but there was no evidence to support that. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. No unusual sounds reported that night. It was like she had walked off the face of the earth. And yet, people felt that something was terribly wrong. The investigation began to grow. Detectives interviewed friends, classmates, partygoers. They checked phone records. They analyzed timelines. But every lead twisted into another question mark. Friends remembered Cindy laughing, joking, planning her week. She was talkative that night, not nervous, not troubled. That made people wonder, if she was comfortable and confident leaving the party, then what could have happened on a quiet street with no witnesses? Police built a timeline. Cindy leaves party at around 2:45 a.m. Last seen walking east toward her apartment. no one reports seeing her after that. That's it. That's all they had. Word spread fast. The college town felt a chill like never before. Every parent worried about their own child walking home alone. Every student wondered how someone could vanish so completely. Even people who barely knew Cindy felt a strange mix of sadness and fear. What if it happened again? What if it was someone watching the streets late at night? The theories ranged from an accidental fall to something more sinister, but no one knew for sure. And when no new information came in, the fear only grew stronger. Detectives returned to the scene again and again. They searched fields, empty lots, abandoned buildings. They checked nearby highways and spots where someone might have been dropped off. They interviewed strangers with no connection. They even brought in outside experts, but nothing brought them closer to Cindy. No sign of a struggle, no eyewitnesses, just an empty street and unanswered questions.
The disappearance didn't fit typical patterns. There were no ransom demands, no credible sightings, no confessions, just silence at the doorstep. The exact moment Cindy walked away from her friends and into the unknown. Weeks passed. Hope faded. Memories blurred. But then, something strange happened. A new piece of information surfaced that gave everyone pause. A witness, someone who hadn't come forward before, stepped forward with something unusual, something that could break the silence. But just as this lead began to take shape, it crumbled. The details were vague, the description didn't match known timelines, and in the end, it left investigators back where they started, facing a mystery with no clear answer. Cindy Song walked into the night like any other student. She expected lights, sidewalks, warm beds waiting. What she found instead was silence. No one has ever been truly able to explain what happened in those dark moments after she left the party. Was it someone waiting in the shadows, a random stranger who crossed her path, or a twist of fate no one could predict? The investigation didn't end here, not by a long shot, but everything that comes next starts with a single question. What did she see right before the silence swallowed her whole? The air was thick with tension as investigators turned their attention to the tiny threads of evidence that had survived the chaos of Cindy's disappearance. Every lead, no matter how small, was a potential doorway into the truth, a truth that had already proven frustratingly elusive. But in the quiet town of State College, Pennsylvania, whispers began to stir, and suddenly everyone was looking over their shoulder. It began with the witness who had come forward weeks after Cindy vanished. Their story was fragmented, hesitant, and full of gaps, but it hinted at something chilling. A dark car had been parked along Cindy's route that night, its headlights off, engine silent, almost invisible under the streetlights. A shadowy figure was seen standing near it, watching the empty streets. For the first time since Cindy disappeared, there was someone or something that could be linked to her vanishing. Detectives tried to trace the car. License plate checks, neighborhood canvassing, and traffic camera footage all led to dead ends. The car was unregistered, its origin unknown, its driver unseen. It was as if it had been a phantom, appearing just to witness Cindy's last steps before fading into nothing. Meanwhile, the college community felt the growing tension. Students who once laughed in campus cafes now walked in pairs, glancing over shoulders. Late-night parties were quieter, streets emptier. The fear wasn't just about Cindy, it was about the possibility that someone dangerous had been watching, waiting. Parents called in repeatedly, asking investigators for updates. Every unanswered question only intensified their fear. Police tried to calm the community, insisting they were following every lead, but the truth was terrifyingly simple. There was almost nothing to follow. Every search, every interview, every hunch ended in frustration. Cindy's friends began retracing her last steps. They remembered the jokes she made, the way she hesitated at a corner before crossing the street, the little things that seemed irrelevant at the time. But in hindsight, every pause, every glance became a potential clue. Something or someone had altered her path that night, but who and why? Cindy's family was devastated. They clung to hope while living every parent's nightmare, knowing their child was missing, feeling powerless, and watching life slowly drift forward without answers. Press conferences, interviews, community vigils, all attempts to keep the search alive became routine, yet each day that passed without a breakthrough was a dagger. Her parents remembered the last time they spoke to her, the mundane conversation about plans for the weekend, the excitement over classes, the laughter about a silly costume mishap. They replayed that night endlessly, searching for any sign, any hint that could explain what happened. And slowly, an unsettling realization took root. Cindy's disappearance wasn't random. There was intent behind it. Someone had waited. Someone had chosen that night, that street, that moment. Months into the investigation, the police discovered something strange. A man with a history of similar crimes targeting young women near college campuses had been in the area around the time Cindy disappeared, but the connection was tenuous. His alibi checked out in some areas, and in others, it was suspiciously vague. Detectives looked deeper, interviewing anyone who had even the faintest contact with him. Friends, neighbors, previous victims. Everything pointed to a shadowy pattern, one that could not be confirmed, but could not be ignored either. Was Cindy the first victim, or had she stumbled into the path of someone who had done this before? Yet even with this lead, frustration mounted. There was no proof, no evidence that could stand in court, just patterns and suspicions, and the ever-present question, how did someone vanish in sight and whole? Then came a chilling moment. A neighbor who had previously been reluctant to speak came forward with a story she had kept to herself for weeks. On the night of Cindy's disappearance, she had seen a man lurking near the apartment complex. He didn't approach anyone, just watched, waited, disappeared into the shadows.
This eyewitness account reignited the investigation. Police canvassed the area repeatedly, trying to match the description, but no one had seen him elsewhere. It was as if he had vanished along with Cindy. The community grew anxious. Parents warned their children, friends became hyper-aware, and students avoided walking alone. The fear wasn't just about Cindy anymore. It was about the presence of someone dangerous, someone patient, someone calculated. As the investigation stretched into its second year, new theories emerged. Some believed Cindy had been abducted by someone she knew, a friend or acquaintance with sinister motives. Others feared a stranger with a disturbing pattern of behavior, someone who chose his victims with care. Every new tip brought hope, but every lead collapsed under scrutiny. Detectives knew one thing for certain: Cindy's disappearance wasn't an accident. And yet every effort to uncover the truth only highlighted the darkness surrounding her last known moments. The night she walked home, the shadowed street, the silent car, and the watching figure, these fragments of a terrifying puzzle refused to fit together. Then, just when investigators began to feel they had reached the edge of the mystery, a new piece of information surfaced. It was small, almost insignificant, a detail in a witness statement that had been overlooked, buried under months of paperwork. But it was enough to suggest one terrifying possibility. Cindy's song might not have been taken randomly. She might have been watched, studied, chosen, and her abductor could still be nearby, waiting. The next chapter would take us deeper into the hunt, revealing connections and chilling possibilities that would shock the town and the world. The nights grew longer, colder, and heavier with tension as the investigation dragged on. Every corner of State College seemed haunted by Cindy's disappearance, and every shadow on the streets sparked fear. The town had changed since that night. Laughter was quieter, students walked in pairs, and every phone call asking about Cindy carried a weight of dread. Detectives pored over the tiny clue that had resurfaced. It was a simple observation from a witness, one that most had ignored at first. But now, in the context of months of dead ends, it became the key to a new lead. Cindy's route, the darkened streets, the car, and the man watching, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit neatly together, suddenly hinted at something far more deliberate than anyone had imagined. The man seen lurking near her apartment that night became the focus of the investigation. Police canvassed the neighborhood repeatedly, questioning residents, reviewing footage, checking past arrests and complaints. Yet for every small lead, a dozen questions appeared. Who was he? Had he chosen Cindy at random, or had he followed her from the party? Did he know her, or was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Meanwhile, the story of Cindy's disappearance became more than just a missing person case. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly a peaceful night could turn terrifying. Every new report of suspicious activity in the town reignited the collective anxiety. Parents worried, students panicked, and the community demanded answers that no one could give. The investigation eventually uncovered that a pattern of abductions had occurred in nearby towns over the years. Women had vanished late at night under circumstances similar to Cindy's. Each case was slightly different, but the common threads were there. Dark streets, silence, and a stranger who seemed to appear out of nowhere. The detectives began connecting dots that led to a grim possibility. Cindy might not have been the first, and she might not be the last. Despite these connections, nothing concrete emerged. There were no bodies, no confessions, no eyewitnesses who could confirm exactly what had happened. Every clue led to another dead end. It was as if Cindy had vanished into a parallel world, leaving only fear, speculation, and heartbreak behind. Months turned into years. Cindy's parents continued to hope, clinging to the smallest hints, replaying every memory, searching for some sign, some piece of evidence that might have been overlooked. Friends held vigils, organized searches, and handed out flyers, but each effort ended with the same crushing silence. Then, one day, a strange tip came from someone who had never spoken before. They claimed to know something, a small but specific detail about the night Cindy disappeared. It wasn't much, but it was enough to reignite the investigation once again. Detectives traced the lead, cross-checked timelines, and examined patterns. The detail didn't give them an answer, but it hinted at a terrifying possibility. The person responsible might have planned the disappearance with precision, studying Cindy's movements in advance.
The thought was chilling. Cindy had walked that night expecting nothing more than a quiet journey home. She never imagined someone was waiting, someone who had carefully chosen her, watched her, and struck with precision. The realization made the town shiver. Every parent, every student, every resident wondered, if it could happen to Cindy, could it happen to them? As the investigation continued, detectives knew one thing. The key to solving Cindy Song's disappearance might lie in a combination of luck, timing, and the faintest whisper of a clue. They were chasing shadows, studying patterns, and piecing together fragments of a life that had been stolen in an instant. The story of Cindy Song was far from over. Each unanswered question, each dead end, and each mysterious lead deepened the mystery, keeping the world guessing. The chilling thought lingered in everyone's mind. Someone out there knew the truth, but they hadn't spoken. And in the darkness of State College, where the streets once felt safe, the question remained, who was watching, and would Cindy ever be found? The next chapter, if revealed, would dive even deeper into the final twists of this haunting case, exploring leads that could finally bring answers or uncover truths that no one was prepared to face. The years passed, but the streets of State College never forgot Cindy Song. Every late night, every flickering streetlight, every shadowed corner carried the memory of the young woman who had vanished in silence. For her family, friends, and the investigators who had never stopped searching,
Each day without answers was another reminder of the unknown, of a darkness that had walked right into their lives and left nothing behind. Investigators continued to follow leads, old and new. Each small clue was examined with meticulous care. They spoke to anyone who had been near Cindy's apartment on that night, cross-referenced timelines, and revisited evidence that had once seemed unimportant. Tiny details, a movement in the shadows, a fleeting figure in a parking lot, a single unfamiliar car seen on surveillance were scrutinized. Every lead was a thread, but the tapestry of what really happened remained elusive. As the investigation stretched into decades, patterns became clearer. Experts began comparing Cindy's case to similar abductions across Pennsylvania and nearby states. There were similarities: late-night disappearances, victims walking alone, strangers lurking near their homes, and no trace left behind. The possibility that Cindy's case was connected to a larger, more calculated series of crimes could not be ignored. Despite these connections, the trail ran cold again and again. Police exhausted every avenue, from interviewing past offenders to analyzing geographic patterns, but the truth remained just out of reach. Cindy had walked into the night expecting a short, ordinary journey home, yet someone had taken that night from her and left nothing but questions. Her parents never stopped searching. They turned their grief into action, speaking publicly about the dangers of unsupervised walks, urging communities to be vigilant, and keeping Cindy's story alive in the hopes that someone, somewhere, would remember something crucial. Friends shared memories, hoping to humanize the missing person in the eyes of the public, not letting her fade into a statistic. Then came whispers of a final, chilling detail. Evidence suggesting that Cindy might have been followed before she even left the party. Someone could have been observing her movements for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The thought was horrifying. A quiet, patient predator who had meticulously planned every step. But again, without proof, the theory remained a theory, a shadow hanging over every investigation. Even today, the case of Cindy Song remains unsolved. Investigators continue to revisit it periodically, hoping modern technology, improved DNA analysis, digital tracking, and cold case techniques might finally reveal what happened on that fateful night. Until then, her story remains a chilling reminder that sometimes the most ordinary nights can hold unimaginable danger. The streets of State College still hold her footsteps in memory. The flickering lights still cast long shadows, and the silence at the doorstep continues to haunt everyone who knew her story. Cindy Song's disappearance is not just a mystery, it is a warning, a testament to the fragility of life, and a haunting reminder that sometimes evil walks quietly among us, unseen, unnoticed, and unstoppable. And so the story ends, not with answers, but with the echo of a young woman who vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions, fear, and the unbroken hope that someday, someone will finally uncover the truth.